Pillars of Eternity is an old-school style CRPG that is proof that not every Kickstarter game is a scam, just 90% of them. Developed by Obsidian Entertainment, the game company renowned for putting out buggy, barely functional masterpieces like Fallout New Vegas, KOTOR 2, and Alpha Protocol, Pillars of Eternity was meant to be a spiritual successor to the, at the time dead, Baldur's Gate series. Well, it's 2024, and Baldur's Gate is back in full swing, and Pillars of Eternity 2 sold like shit and nearly killed the series, so I guess the world is rebalancing the equilibrium or something like that. Funny how the gaming industry works. Set in the mystical frontier land of the Dyrwood, you take on the role of a lone traveler, journeying to the town of Gilded Vale to obtain free real estate. But lo, a diabolical MacGuffin sidelines your plans and makes an unlikely adventurer out of you. Joined by a motley crew of hooligans and given a time-sensitive mission, which I immediately began ignoring in favor of running errands for people, you embark on a quest in search of the... So I've been doing videos on first-person shooters for about the last month and a half, so what better way to retain the viewers that I've acquired since then than by doing a video about a classic-style CRPG? For the uninformed, Pillars of Eternity is a game that was released in 2015, billed as an unofficial continuation of the gameplay and world design philosophy of the older Infinity Engine RPGs developed by BioWare and Black Isle Studios. It was the subject of an enormously successful Kickstarter, and was one of the games that kicked off this new wave of CRPG revival titles. If you've been enjoying Baldur's Gate 3 lately, as many people have, then you have this game to thank for it, along with Shadowrun Returns and Wasteland 2. Seriously, this was a dead genre before these games brought it back. Now, I'm not exactly a grizzled veteran of the CRPG genre. I've played a handful, I actually did a video on one a few months back, but I've never actually played the original Baldur's Gate titles or even the older Fallouts. To put it bluntly, I'm a fucking casual. What I've played of the genre I've greatly enjoyed though, with the only one I had any real negative opinion on being Underrail, which I didn't hate, but unless you're a real hard ass with these games, it's pretty much cock and ball torture. Pillars is a game that I've had my eye on for a while, but have never really gotten around to, until my friend Rhett bought it for me as a Christmas gift and said he would dox me if I didn't make a video on it. I initially refused, as I do not negotiate with terrorists, but he showed the location of my house on Instagram Live, so I was forced to give in. Alright, let's start up the game and get going. Pillars of Eternity is set in a country known as the Dyrwood, which is basically a fantasy version of the original American colonies, at least as far as I can tell. After 66 hours in this world, I think I know it fairly well, so I'll be giving you a tour of all the major attractions that this new nation has to offer. First things first, gotta create my character, which brings me to what is quite possibly the hardest decision in the game, to have tits or not to have tits. Proud member of the Tate Nation here. So one of the things that kinda took me off guard was the fact that when you read the descriptions of the various races, sub-races, and classes in the game, you're bombarded with mountains upon mountains of information and world building that is a little overwhelming at first. In the land of the Adirian Empire, just east of the Valian Republic, some Biowac rended the souls of thousands of Iroglonfithans and condemned them to wander for eternity through the fields of Raid Saras, a land ruled by Aothas who had come to power in the aftermath of the Broken Stone War. Hold up. You're gonna need to explain the meaning of every goddamn word you just said to me, because I didn't understand a fucking thing that you just put on my screen. I'm not really gonna get into the nitty-gritty of the lore in this video, mostly because I want it to run south of 3 hours, but basically when you create your character, you got a choice between 6 different races. First, you got the humans, who are boring, and if you actually pick this race to play as, I think you're missing the point of video games entirely. Second is the Aumaua, basically what would happen if you took Pacific Islanders and gave them all the physique of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and put their visual style at the mercy of the guy who designed the Navi in Avatar. How did that new one make like $2 billion, by the way? Third is the Elves. I'm not going to talk about these guys, you know what the fuck they are. Next up is Dwarves, another fantasy staple that needs no further explanation. The Orlans, who are kind of like a cross between Elves and Dwarves, and the Godlike, the species that will be chosen primarily by angsty millennials who yearn for the days when Tumblr still had porn on it and its population hadn't yet infested the rest of the internet. I picked this one. Was 6 different races not enough for you? Well, guess what? Obsidian sees your DEI committee and they're not fucking around, because each race has different sub-races as well. For the Godlike, the race I chose, you get a choice between 4 different flavors of DeviantArt OCs: Death, Fire, Nature, and Moonlike. I picked Moonlight because lunar magic is cool and I like Bloodborne. As far as classes go, you've got like 30, so I'll forego describing each individual one and just say that I picked Chanter because spooking motherfuckers with dark incantations is cool, they can get necromancy powers, and the description compares them to bards, which, let's face it, that's basically what I am here on YouTube. So, with the character creation process out of the way, easily the most challenging part of the game, especially with all the stats and numbers and percentage points you have to look at, let's get into the game, and I'll show you around the Dyrwood. At the start of my journey, I was part of a caravan heading to the town of Gilded Vale, whose lord has recently started offering land to any settlers interested in helping to increase the population. Unfortunately, the people I was traveling with did not mask up, so I ended up contracting COVID-19 as a Thoth variant and was forced to go and look for a natural remedy nearby, as I am banned from receiving the Moderna or Pfizer vaccines due to militant opposition to 5G networks. Since I've spent my prior life entirely confined to the suburbs of LA, I don't actually know what natural remedies look like, so I just ate a shitload of berries I found in a bush and hoped for the best. Accompanying me in this endeavor was a woman named Kalisha, whose backstory I can't really remember anything about because, oh shit, spoiler alert, she died in the prologue, which is this section we're in right now, by the way. As we were making our way back to the camp, we were taken upon by a group of tribal barbarians. It is here that I had my first encounter with the game's combat system, referred to by the great scholars of the genre as real-time with pause. What this means is that unlike games such as Wasteland and XCOM, you do not get specific breaks in between the action to agonize over the fact that you misclicked and your unit moved over one tile and went from having a 99% chance to hit to fucking 24% somehow. XCOM is bullshit and I hate it, but I also beat it 3 times. Instead, all of the action happens simultaneously as the battle plays out, similar to an RTS. Unlike an RTS, however, the RTWP system is aware that not everyone who plays video games is South Korean, so we're not all able to micromanage the entirety of the post-Pearl Harbor Allied forces. This means that brainlets like me are able to pause the action whenever we need to, and figure out how we're going to recover the dire situation we've gotten ourselves into. With the overview out of the way, let's see how my first experience with this system went. What the fuck is this garbage ass system? This stupid dumb fuckery. This ain't the way you play a game. This is dog shit. Real time with pause? More like no pause needed, cause I'm uninstalling this bullshit game. That was my first reaction, but then I was like, wait a minute, I'll give it another shot. And then I actually really liked it. It can be tough to get the hang of at first, but it ends up being surprisingly easy to adapt to, at least it was for me. It almost kind of makes things feel a little more streamlined, because combat encounters go a lot quicker this way, which I think also allows the developers to be a lot more liberal with enemy placement, as engagements move at a much more brisk pace. So after dispatching the hooligans who murdered the rest of the caravan, I took shelter in some nearby ruins with Kalisha and some guy I saved whose name I can't remember. No, I won't look it up because, whoa, hey, check it out, another spoiler, he also dies in like 2 minutes. We take shelter in some nearby ruins to avoid a bivouac, which is like a magical tornado, I guess, where Kalisha tries to go ahead without us and steps on a trap, which kills her, and then we go outside where some fucked up ritual is taking place and knocked me out and killed the red shirt who was with me. Upon waking up, I discovered that I can now see dead people. This was very concerning, as I haven't done peyote since the last time I went to Burning Man. Now the last survivor of my caravan, and with no other real options, I trekked to Gilded Vale in the hopes that I could find a clinician who could prescribe me with some highly addictive opioids to help with my newly developed mental illness. In Gilded Vale, you can find several notable landmarks, such as the completely destroyed church that is overrun with sentient balls of lightning, as well as the tree covered in dead hanging bodies. You'll also meet your first 2 companions here. The first one is a guy named Edor. According to the wiki, he's a fighter class, but I wouldn't know because I actually had no idea he was supposed to be a companion, so I didn't really pay any attention to him. This is because I'm what those who study psychology refer to as a fucking dipshit. Second companion is Aloth, an elven mage who pissed off some local toughs with his undiagnosed schizophrenia. As a mage, he's primarily focused on ranged attacks, with an assortment of spells that are geared towards separating souls from bodies. My strategy with him was to use everyone else to get all the enemies clustered into one big ball and then use Aloth to start dropping atom bombs on people. The big narrative arc with Gilded Vale is about its lord, Roderick. You see, in the aftermath of a war in the Dyrwood some years before the events of the game, there was a violent war fought with a neighboring territory that resulted in the death of a man named Widewin, who was serving as the vessel for a god named Aothus, which led to a plague in which newborn babies are no longer guaranteed to have souls. Without souls, the babies basically turn into vicious zombies, which isn't really fun for anyone involved. Gilded Vale has been hit by this particularly hard, and Roderick's wife has just recently given birth to one of these soulless abominations, referred to in-game as Hollowborn. This has driven Roderick to tyranny, with anyone who speaks out against him or pisses him off ending up on the tree in the center of town. After doing some odd jobs for the locals and proving that I'm capable of putting one foot in front of the other, I was contacted by Roderick's brother, who gave me the job of breaking into the Lord's Hold and putting an end to his reign of terror. I did just that, sneaking in through the sewers and confronting the Mad Monarch. The game gives you several options, as any good RPG does, such as negotiating with him, siding with him, or appealing to his guilt and sense of morality. I told him to go fuck himself, then we threw down, and I emerged the victor. I may have died the first time and come back later with a higher level and bigger party, but this is my video and I control the narrative. Back in Gilded Vale, I couldn't find anyone to cop Xannies from, so instead I just huffed gasoline with some homeless Gulf War vet in an alleyway, which opened my third eye and let me talk to the spirit of one of the bodies on the tree, who directed me to a deserted fortress to the west known as Kai Nua. On my way there, I met an elderly priest named Durance, who called me a pussy and told me to KMS before saying he wanted to follow me around. I was too confused to be offended, so I let him. The thing about Durance is he's an enormous prick. He exists for one reason and one reason only, to talk mad shit to everyone and everything, most of all me. If I walked across the surface of the ocean, he'd tell everyone I can't swim. If I turned water to wine, he'd say I'm an alcoholic. If I returned from the stone crypt, he'd say I was scared of the dark. He's got a lot of useful combat abilities though. I developed a habit of starting off every engagement by immediately spamming all of his buffs and debuffs, making it so I didn't took less damage and enemies would go blind and shit themselves. Pretty good guy to have around for those reasons. At Kai Nua, I got my fourth companion, a nerd named Kana Rua. He's looking for some book or some shit to help improve his nation, but who cares about that? He has a gun. It fucks people up real good, but he takes a quarter century to reload it, so he's always got to stay back. He's also a chanter, so he passively gives buffs and debuffs, which stack with mine and also help to tip battles into my favor. Within the fortress, the perks started kicking in, and I carried on a fascinating conversation with a chair. It told me that the former owner of Kai Nua had gone batshit, kind of like I am, and now spends all day jerking off in the dungeon. I caught him in the act of gooning to his favorite VTuber and asked for his help with my condition. Unfortunately, it turns out that my interruption distracted him from hearing Streamer Chan reading his donation message, enraging him. He got aggressive with me, so I had to put him down, but his now lust-free spirit informed me that I would find my answers in the blue district of Defiance Bay. Now that I'd killed the owner of the keep, the chair informed me that I was now its rightful master. I'm not really sure if that's how property rights work, but hey, I got a fucking castle now, so I ain't gonna argue with her. You can do all these upgrades to it, which give you different rest bonuses. It's pretty cool. That's not all though, because underneath the castle lies the endless paths of Nua, a 15-floor mega dungeon filled with like 8 different subterranean civilizations for you to plunder and steal from. My personal favorite was this colony of spider people that I became friends with. Since you encountered early on, the idea is that you advance through it in increments, as the enemies on level 1 are vastly weaker than the enemies on level 10. Throughout my entire playthrough, this area remained a constant, with me returning to it at different intervals and advancing just a little bit further before getting to a level or area that just completely castrated me. On to Defiance Bay, and it's the start of Act 2, aka the longest act, because Defiance Bay has approximately 40 trillion quests in it. A vast majority of my playthrough was in this act, doing bullshit for every neurotic deadbeat in this town. Everything from telling a woman's slacker boyfriend that she was done with his shit — he turned out to be a drug-dealing shapeshifter, by the way — to exorcising a ghost from the city's lighthouse. I explored the catacombs and came across another cult meeting, which I crashed and had another drug trip afterwards that directed me towards 3 different locations: the town's rich district, Heritage Hill, an insane asylum just down the road, and some ancient ruins in the outskirts of a town called Dyrwood. Heritage Hill might have been the rich district at one point, but I'm guessing a necromancer tired of working minimum wage at Mickey D's decided to wage his own brand of class warfare, because now the whole place is overrun with zombies. At the top of the tower in the center of the district, I discover one of the very same devices that I saw at the beginning of the game. I guess the cult was here earlier. In the nut house, I discover that one of the patients is being possessed by the leader of said cult, and I end up having to fight through the guards of the asylum, who are these strange flesh golems. How the fuck is this gonna help anybody's mental state? Finally, I journeyed to Dyrwood, a backwater hick town where I got like a million more side quests, the highlight of which was discovering that a satanic cult was conducting rituals in tunnels under the very ground. There's so many fucked up jokes I could make about current events and conspiracy theories with this one, but I feel like I'm already skirting the line, so let's just move on. Fought my way through like a billion monsters in the temple outside town and found another one of those soul machines. Outside, I was approached by a detective working for a mysterious woman named Lady Webb, head of an intelligence gathering agency who wants me to meet her. I returned to Defiance Bay and was briefed by this mistress of mystery on a variety of topics relating to everything from her own personal history to the chemtrails that Big Pharma uses to lower men's sperm count. She also told me that the cult leader I'm searching for is a man named Theos, but in order to get the resources necessary for that, I'll need an audience with the Duke of Defiance Bay. To accomplish this, I'll need the sponsorship of one of three factions: the Dozens, who are basically medieval Proud Boys, House Domino, who are basically a medieval mafia, and the Crucible Knights, who are basically medieval cops. Only the best that society can offer, I suppose. I went with the Crucible Knights because I had already done a bunch of shit for them earlier. Once I got into the town hall, I was given the opportunity to listen in on a hearing concerning the future of the practice of animancy, the art and science of soul experimentation, which according to the lore has led almost exclusively to bad things in the past, but I guess if we do it enough, eventually we'll get a good return on investment. The hearing goes extremely south after Theos possesses one of the animancers and murks the Duke, which starts a riot in the city. I made my way back to Lady Webb's headquarters only to find that Theos had done her in as well, but she left a spiritual message that I was able to perceive after snorting a massive line of coke. This transmission from beyond urged me to go to the neighboring city of Twin Elms. So starts Act 3 of the story. By this point, my party had grown considerably, now featuring Sagani, a violent van life and cottage core enthusiast on the search for the man who left her on red, Pallegina, a fucking bird woman with an Italian accent who also is a cleric who can set her sword on fire. Oh my god, this lady is badass. Heravius, a homeless guy who farts and shits all over the place constantly, and Grieving Mother, a Wiccan candle maker who makes her income from TikTok sponsorships. As far as gameplay goes, Sagani is a ranger who I mostly used to snipe bigger targets from afar. Pallegina I used as a berserker who would just run straight into battle and fuck everyone's face up. Heravius just threw rocks at people mostly. Sometimes he turned into a werewolf too. This guy is all fucked up. And Grieving Mother is a cipher. I honestly never really got the hang of her. She requires all this resource management. At this point, I'm also leveled up like crazy. I can now use my magic chance to summon a fucking dragon, combined with Kana's high level ability to summon 2 ogres, and collectively we both not only end fights almost instantaneously whenever we do this, but we also decimate my frame rate. Now for the final big location, the city of Twin Elms. Twin Elms is home to the Glanfithans, the native population of the Dyrwood and the original inhabitants of this land, before colonists from a larger empire came and said, nah, this is our thing now. Fuck, that sounds like something, but I can't remember what it is right now. Anyway, Twin Elms is basically their cultural stronghold in this region now, and we gotta go there to talk with druids or some shit. I talk to said druids who tell me to talk to these weird tree people. Before I do that, I look around a little more. I'm a tourist here, I gotta take in the sights. Twin Elms has a few neat attractions. Aside from the aforementioned druids and weird plant women, you've also got this central hall, which serves as the political capital of Glanfith, as well as this temple where they honor whichever animal demonstrates that's the deadliest predator. Oh, and there's also this tunnel where they do human sacrifices. That's a little sketchy, but I'm not here to kill half the population, and apparently they consent to it, so it's whatever, I guess. I learned from the Poison Ivy people that the next step of my journey is to journey to a nearby island and jump down a hole that is apparently the entrance to some kind of lair where Theos is. Before I do that, I'll need to win the favor of at least one of the gods in order to have protection when I do said jumping. My attempts to do that went very poorly. Alright, fuck that for now. Let's go to Heravius' thing on the island. So I went there and explored around for a bit. I couldn't find what H-Dog was looking for, but I did find the hole. I clicked on it and was greeted with a text screen saying that I could go ahead and jump in. This'll probably kill me, but I can always reload save, so let's do it and see what happens.
Summoning your courage, you took a leap of faith into the pit at the summit of the Burial Isle. The fall seemed to take ages, but then, all at once, the ground rushed to meet you and end your life.
What the fuck? You mean that is seriously an ending? After 66 hours, all those quests, all that build-up, the ending to my story is that I jumped down a pit and died? I bet this is a meme. They 100% expect you to just reload a save, but you know what? Fuck that. The credits are rolling. I beat the game. I beat it. There's credits. You can't tell me I didn't beat it. Being serious though, I thought this was funny, but after like a month of playing this game, I was ready to call it. I'll probably come back and actually finish the main quest whenever I do the DLC, but for now, I think this is a fitting end to my tale of debauchery. Overall, I thought Pillars of Eternity was a really good game, and I plan to eventually play the sequel, Deadfire. It's also perfect timing for this video, because Microsoft just had that dev showcase where they showed off that extended look at Avowed, which is actually set in the same universe as Pillars of Eternity. I thought it looked really cool. I liked the art style, and the gameplay looks fun. It was really cool to see a lot of the monsters and races that I'd spent that last couple of weeks fighting and interacting with up close and in high res. The only problem I have is that rather than 6 different races, you'd only play as either an elf or a human, which is not based and most certainly not red-pilled. Other than that, Pillars of Eternity was a great time, and if you're itching for some CRPG goodness, or Baldur's Gate 3 got you into the genre and you want more of a deep cut, then you can't go wrong with this one. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go smoke crack and read about how Malaysia Airlines got abducted by aliens. Keep your drug pipes by your side, everyone. Them aliens may take our planes, but they'll never get our rocks. Hey everybody, if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thanks. It means a whole lot. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all your standard YouTube outro stuff that you always hear. And other than that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.